mouth breather. As much as I wanted to remain a die-hard hardliner who never obeyed the mask regulation under any circumstances because of his fundamental disagreement with it, I have not been able to quite live up to that lofty ideal. I do have to still function in our society, and the number of people who share my extreme opposition to this practice is nowhere near sufficient for me to be able to mount any sort of civil disobedience. So, out of the necessity of day-to-day survival, and when I go out for my roughly once a week shopping trips and have to ride the bus and go into buildings and so forth, I have to cover my face or they will not let me in. So because I cannot afford the outrageous prices that they're currently charging for masks as part of their effort to capitalize on the situation, what I did was I took 4 old socks and knitted them together. By knitted I mean knotted. So I have this thing that can completely, if just barely, cover my nose and mouth, which tends to slip off before terribly long, but it does the job for however long is absolutely necessary. So this this suggests a topic to me. It makes me think of the line from the book Brave New World. Brave New World is a favorite book of mine. It is often mentioned in the same breath as the George Orwell's 1984. Brave New World is by Aldous Huxley, and they are both dystopian tales, so they're often compared to each other as sort of the two most famous versions of a fictional dystopia. But in my opinion, they are drastically different. 1984 is explicitly about the triumph of absolute fascist evil in its purest form. Nobody in the party that works for Big Brother is under any delusion whatsoever that the thing that they're doing is beneficial in any way. They are simply absolute state power doing anything it can get away with by maintaining absolute control over the population, to the point that they have psych files where they will look up every person's greatest fear, and if that person tries to do any sort of, even the most minor, even what they call thought crime, that's where the term comes from, anybody who is suspected of any disloyalty whatsoever to the party gets tortured with whatever their biggest fear is until they submit and will, happily betray their closest loved ones. So that is absolute dyed-in-the-wool 100% evil as a social institution. No gray area whatsoever. In my opinion, Brave New World is very, very different from that. It does have a couple of hardcore atrocities in it, notably the torturing of infants, and also intentionally engineering birth defects in order to produce a servitor class of people who are too dumb to not do what they're told. That's in my opinion, that was Huxley making a serious error in judgment about human nature, but regardless. So with those, there's those things, and there's the attitude of sort of intentionally making people childlike and discouraging the, for lack of a better term, the human spirit. All of this is fairly bad. But in my opinion, it's less a case of black hat evil 1984 style and more a case of a society deciding to do whatever is necessary in order to tame the beast of human nature. And so I do get the impression that the people who set the Brave New World system into place legitimately thought that this was the best way to ensure there wouldn't be a World War III or whatever, is to just completely kill the rebellious part of the human spirit and maintain absolute control as the only method of preserving the peace and the safety of the population, which I still disagree with that. I mean, I disagree with the way our real-life society is doing it, and I disagree with the way the Brave New World society is doing it. But in my opinion, they are not being cackling black hat evil. They are just making a choice to try and do what they think is right on a societal level. And they're not 100% wrong, even if I disagree with them. And the tragic outcome at the end of the book is largely the result of our viewpoint character, the savage who comes from outside of the society and refuses to integrate into it. He comes to a bad end mostly because he was 100% unwilling to adapt and unwilling to go back to where he came from and forget about his experiences in civilization. He sort of intentionally made himself miserable by staying close enough to society that they could drive him insane and make him come to a bad end. So, Brave New World is still a disturbing dystopian book, but it is, in my opinion, it's like the difference between Hitler and your average corrupt politician. The corrupt politician is not a great guy. He's lining his own pockets at the public's expense, but he's not engineering genocide, so there is a difference there. Anyway, the reason I bring up Brave New World is in Brave New World, one of the aspects of the totalitarian society is the slogan that is indoctrinated into the people of more spending, less mending. So the tie-in to my handmade mask should be obvious at this point. I was not about to run out and spend $20 on a washable mask, or a lot more than that on a supply of disposable masks that would last as long as I needed it to. Because the capitalist imperative in our society really wants you to buy the latest thing and do what all the neighbors are doing and all that. So it's essentially a less intense form of the same sort of thing that the Brave New World people are doing. And in Brave New World, the slogan, more spending, less mending, don't try to repair things, just buy the new things. That's very close to how actual real life works. We don't quite go to that propagandistic extreme, but it is in that direction. It is strongly that there are all sorts of social taboos where people who are clearly and obviously trying to be economical by reusing old goods that are getting run down, walking around with a shirt that has a couple of holes in it here and there, even though they're not exposing anything terribly important, you're going to look down on that guy because they are clearly, or that girl, whoever. That person is clearly not doing what society as a whole tries to get everybody to do, which is to spend as much money as they can possibly afford on the latest and hottest consumer trends and be part of the, keep up with the Joneses, that kind of a thing. So this coronavirus is just the latest aspect of how society is pushing that kind of planned obsolescence for the sake of economic growth, and it is just as gross as at any other time in history that they've done that. Any form of crass commercialism since the 1940s or 30s or 20s or 10s, probably going back further than that. Stereotypically, the Old West had the snake oil salesman and various similar things, so it's probably been going on for a lot longer than that, back in the Middle Ages, if not earlier. But there has definitely been a massive shift in the intensity and the sleaziness of the tactics that people are willing to use. As we move more towards the one world government kind of a situation, it becomes easier for those kind of totalitarian tactics to happen. So I don't think that anybody involved in this coronavirus is trying to be Big Brother from 1984, but I think there are probably quite a few of them that are trying to be whoever the rough equivalent in Brave New World. I don't think in the original book they actually had a single character, but in the TV movie or miniseries or whatever it was that I saw on the Sci-Fi Channel somewhere in the 90s or early 2000s, Leonard Nimoy played the number one guy in the party and kind of had it out conversationally with the viewpoint character. And his portrayal of that is probably one of the big reasons why I have the rather charitable reading of the book that I do, because the miniseries also left out some of the more atrocious activities that are explicitly described in the book. So that version of Brave New World in particular seemed very much a kinder, friendlier sort of dystopia that really was just about we're going to keep the peace and preserve people's lives by taking away this kind of poetic element that they feel like is part of their souls. We're going to beat that feeling out of them, but once we've finished doing that, once they're all thoroughly brainwashed to agree with our more materialistic perspective of, there is no higher spirit of humanity. You're just a person who has to consume in order to live, so go consume and be happy about it. That's not an awful approach to social engineering. It's not the one that I would prefer, certainly, but it is a somewhat rational approach to the question of how do we keep people from rioting and destroying everything and killing thousands of people in civil unrest. It's a somewhat logical approach to the thing. Anyway, so if I have to cover my face in order to be allowed to exist within society, I am not going to buy a new thing. The industry is really trying to push the idea of this is a must-have clothing item. You have to buy pants, you have to buy shirts, and now you have to buy masks. I will resist that as long as possible, and if I can find an old t-shirt, when I run out of old socks to tie together, or if it becomes clear that that's no longer accepted, I will tear up an old t-shirt and use it to make a full face covering bandana. I am not going to buy a new kerchief even if it's only going to be $2, because in my opinion, a responsible member of society does not waste resources, not even if advertisement is trying to program them to think that they should. The resources of the planet Earth are finite. We need to conserve and we need to make use of what we have and not strip mine the Earth any further than necessary in order to harvest more resources so that we can continue driving this unsustainable engine of conspicuous consumption. If the coronavirus is not going to kill us all, the last I heard it has killed less than 100,000 people worldwide, and that may sound like a lot, but the Earth's population is close to 8 billion, I think, at this point. Maybe if we're super conservative, we'd say 6 billion, which is a way outdated figure and almost certainly not true. Then 1 out of every 60,000 people has died of coronavirus, and something like 10 times that number have been affected non-lethally. That is completely insignificant. The common influenza is almost certainly more dangerous than that. So the worldwide COVID hysteria is absolutely ridiculous and completely a product of manufactured outrage by the government and the media, completely exaggerating and lying by omission and doing everything in their power to manipulate public opinion towards this latest bogeyman. And it's going to turn out in like 5 years, we're going to figure out that the whole coronavirus hysteria now was just as invalid as Bush's WMDs in Iraq that justified invading Iraq and creating the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, who I refuse to call ISIS because ISIS is an Egyptian god and her name is not to be maligned. But anyway, if you go back before that, the thing before that I'm very aware of is the satanic panic of the 80s, where children were supposedly recovering memories under hypnosis, and everybody thought there were satanic sacrifices killing children, and it turned out to be completely 100% false. And the WMDs in Iraq was completely 100% false. I still think that the COVID hysteria is going to be, if not 100%, then at least like 95% completely manufactured nonsense. And it horrifies me that so many people in this modern internet age were willing to go along with that. Even if there is a grain of truth to it, it is certainly not as true as we're being told. And the fact that everybody is just believing it, and that one of our presidential candidates is currently running on the platform of I'm going to force everyone to wear a mask, it very much makes me feel as though having to wear a mask in order to ride the bus or go into a building, I feel like I've been peer pressured into the Hitler Youth, and it really horrifies me. But like I said, I have to live, so I unfortunately don't have a choice. I really wish I could convince anybody to take my side on this, and we could form, even if it was just like a little 5-person commune that would go live out in the woods or something, where we would get away from this nonsense. I don't know. I'm just rambling at this point. It really has me upset. I've I've been doing this YouTube thing for 4 months as I record this, and no evidence whatsoever that more than like 3 people have ever listened to me. But it's a living.